Hello all. In this video I'll finally get around to looking at 10-Minute Workshop's loose tenon jig. Peter from 10-Minute sent me this pre-production set some time ago, at a stage when he was asking for feedback rather than reviews from a few select folks. On this task I completely failed him, but nonetheless I'll share my initial thoughts and results after my first play here. Now consider Peter a YouTube pal, and I didn't purchase this kit from him. But as always, you'll still get my objective thoughts on it, and, well, you'll just be able to see the results for yourself later in the video and make your own judgments. The jigs are available through the 10-Minute Workshop Etsy page, and what I have here is sold as the full bundle, which includes the 12mm CNC ply jig in 2 pieces, cleverly held together flat pack for shipping or storage via the supplied drop or locator pins. The full bundle also includes an 18mm Tenon guide bush, a 5mm spiral upcut bit with a 1/4 inch shank, and 30 of Festool's 5x30mm Dominos to get you started. Of course, you'll still need to provide your own router. The Tenon guide bush is a good shout as it fits a fair few routers straight off and will fit most others by way of their unibase. None of which I have of course, but we'll get to that. Having removed both locating pins, the 2 pieces meet each other at a right angle. Next step is to mate them then. At the time Peter sent me this jig, the instructional video supplied said to simply glue a nail or screw the 2 pieces together. Some of the testers apparently mentioned the ability to disassemble for storage would be better. As such, the new bundle now comes with 2 M4 threaded inserts and machine screws for joining. They didn't come with my pre-production bundle though, and the smallest I have to hand are these M6 threaded inserts. They will just, and I mean by a hair, sit inside the ply thickness, so I'm going to do some very careful marking and drilling and try and fit these. Et voila! I'm thrilled to inform you that I did indeed manage to just squeeze in these M6 threaded inserts, no bulging of the ply or anything. Everything countersunk so the pieces meet nicely and the router base is unobstructed by screw heads. As mentioned, the full bundle comes with a Tenon 18mm guide bush and a 1/4 inch shank cutter. My 1/4 inch routers are Mafel, and the one that will take guide bushes is proprietary and obsolete with no 18mm available even when not obsolete. This means I'm going to have to use my big Bosch router, which again takes proprietary bushes, and although there's 1/4 inch collets for it, it's actually cheaper to get a guide bush 3D printed and find an 8mm or 1/2mm shank 5mm cutter. But where there's a web, there's a way, and that's just what I did. The Rennie router cutter has an 8mm shank and 5x20mm cutters. I'll leave a link to it and the 3D printed guide bushes below. The chap on eBay will print you all manner of guide bush for about a tenner each. Remember, if buying your own router bit, the blade length will need to be at least 15mm to cut to the required depth for the Dominos. Router kitted out with the new guide bush and cutter, I used the depth guide milled into the end of the jig to set my plunge depth. Here at the bench side, you can see I've got the jig clamped in place, set at a height where the 2 pieces of scrap 18mm melamine MDF can slide underneath it. And I just tighten the workpiece to the jig with a clamp, ready to start cutting. First of the tight mortises cut, I'll remove the clamp. Remove the pin and shuffle the workpiece along to align the centre marks. Then clamp and cut. Middle slot cut, remove the clamp, place the pin at the other end, then slide the work so it stops against it. Clamp, then cut. That's the first 3 tight mortises all done. For the loose mortise, I have to flip the jig around. As you can see, it's pretty obvious which slot is for the tight mortise and which for the loose. Same deal as before, except I'm going into the material's thickness rather than in the end. You'll notice I go back and forth a couple of times when I'm cutting the mortise. You don't need to for a good mortise. I just do it because it helps clear the debris from the holes doing this. Let's bash in some dominoes and check it out then. One thing I will say is the slot is really quite tight for the domino. Like, they have to be bashed in. There's no way I'd be able to insert it by hand. I quite like that, it's just that I don't know if that's normal or not. And together we go. Muggins here, destroying the melamine with the mallet. Look. It's such a nice feature, I think, that the wider slots give you that room to line up the edges. I have to say, the alignment of the face to the edge looks really very good. I mean, I can feel a fraction of a millimetre difference, but for all intents, flush. Let me zoom in a bit so you can have a closer look. Hope it shows alright, but that's pretty good, isn't it? Happy with that, it seems to work a treat. Next then, I thought I'd quickly run through and try out how I'm likely to be using this jig for joining and aligning hardwood boards for tabletops and such. So this jig is designed for 18mm material. You can go down to 12mm no probs, you just have to watch your plunge depths. Even 9mm if you use a spacer. You could also use 25mm sheet goods say, the dominoes just wouldn't be centred. Here though, I'll try doubling up dominoes in these 34mm oak pieces. They've been planed in thickness to the same dimensions, so a good little test for it I think. I'll be clamping the jig to the bench and sliding the material underneath exactly as before. Only difference is I'm not bothering with centre mortises, and I'll be sort of flipping the pieces to do 2 parallel mortises each end. You'll see what I mean. That's what I mean by flip the piece. Pins stay in the same end of the jig temporarily, and I flip the workpiece around to do a mortise opposite end, opposite side. Then I move the pin and repeat for the remaining holes. You'll notice as I'm routing these mortises that I'm plunging to full depth in 2 or 3 passes. In ply, MDF and chipboard you can plunge full depth and route away, but in this hard oak, cutting along the grain, you can expect some chatter doing that. Best avoided by taking a couple of passes. I won't bother boring you with me doing all the loose mortises as well. It's exactly the same process, just with the jig flipped. The moment of truth then. Let's get some dominoes in and see if it lines up. Very tight fitting again. Didn't think they'd go into the mortise when I first put one in place, but with a little persuasion in they went. Then on with the piece with the loose mortise. I've orientated it so the contrasting oak faces are together, thinking it might highlight anything off. Didn't seem to matter to be honest. The join is really quite good. Like with the melamine earlier, perhaps a hair's difference, fraction of a millimetre, nothing that would cause any headaches. It's a strong joint too, even dry like this. Zoomed in a bit there, you can hopefully see what I mean. There's little, if anything, by way of step up. So that's it then. Nice one, Millard. It works well and has given me another set of options for some pieces I'm designing. Never a bad thing. It does have its limitations of course. As mentioned, if you're using other thicknesses, just remember to allow for plunge depths, spacing and offset however they might apply. I'm not fully up on the other larger domino dimensions either, so whether it can be used for the range, just changing cutter dimensions, I don't know. Maybe someone can elaborate on that below. I didn't do any centre panel mortises, mainly due to not having an offcut of suitable size, but it's pretty simple. Just mark your line on the work, break the jig down so it will lay flat and off you go. I was thinking that a couple of holes for screws would be good along this centre line so you can screw the jig down to machine the mortise. The screw holes would eventually be covered by the panel. Looking at the Etsy page, it looks like those production models now have those holes, so boom, ideal. So the jig can be had from as little as £5.99 by buying the plans. The jig from the plans is a little different from my jig, and I think Peter developed it in partnership with someone else, but I'd struggle to think of a cheaper way into domino joinery. The jig proper can be had from £65, going up with varying bundles or jig size. That's right, there's an XL or plus size, which I'll hopefully get to take a look at in due course. But for more on that, just click on the 10-minute Etsy link below. Given how well these work, and that you can be underway in domino joinery for less than £100, it's hard to argue this is anything other than great value. Especially for a hobbyist or someone like myself who just wants the odd domino loose tenon now and again. A frequency of use not justifying a Festool purchase. So I know most of you who watch my channel are also familiar with Peter's, and are probably just as familiar with this jig by now. But nevertheless, I hope you found it interesting watching someone else use it, especially if you're on the fence about buying one. Remember to like the video if you did, sub if you haven't already, support the channel with a super thanks if you can spare it, and check the description below for all the links and details. And, as always, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching.